Thank you for joining Cancer Support Community Atlanta for this program. Please visit our website, cscatlanta.org, for a complete list of live and recorded events. If this is your first time participating, we invite you to complete a new attendee form to stay connected to all future programs.
This is Emily Brown, the Program Director at Cancer Support Community Atlanta. Welcome to this program today. Like I was saying earlier, we are going to have participants muted throughout the program, but if you do have a question, you are welcome to submit it at the chat box at the bottom of your screen, and we will ask those questions as we go, or we will also have a Q&A at the end of the program where you can unmute yourself and ask Jane any questions you might have about the presentation. But I'd like to go ahead and get started here. So this presentation is going to be with Jane Myers, who you see on your screen now. She is a registered licensed occupational therapist practicing in the field of adult rehabilitation for 31 years and a wellness practitioner and education workshop presenter for the past 15 years. She's currently facilitator for Cancer Support Community's body balance class that meets every Tuesdays now at 9 a.m. and also for our Chattahoochee Nature Center walking group, which meets the first and third Tuesday of the month at 11 o'clock. So thank you, Jane, for volunteering to do this program for us today. And without further ado, I'll let you go ahead and get started.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you for joining me today to explore the topic of energy conservation for activities of daily living. I'm an occupational therapist, and I've been so since 1989. And I used to work in inpatient and outpatient therapy before I became a group wellness facilitator for the Cancer Support Community and also Roswell Adult Aquatic Center in St. George Village, where I teach several classes there. And so in occupational therapy, we used energy conservation a lot, and we work with helping people to be independent as possible. So this is a big topic that, we used to use a lot in individual treatment for people. So thank you for joining me, and I look forward to your questions and throughout the session if you would like. So we'll move on to what is energy conservation? Well, it's basically doing activities in the way that is the most efficient way possible so that you can avoid becoming overly tired, so that you can use your energy to do the things that are most important to you. It's doing things in a more sequential way and more pre-planned way so that you can get the most done possible within what energy that you do have. Finding the balance between work and rest and leisure so that you can have less energy demands on your body. And it's adapting your routines that lead to more fatigue. So sometimes our routines can be too taxing, so we need to adjust those. Balancing easier with light activities and things like that. So work simplification goes along with energy conservation, and that's basically doing things in a more simpler, more practical way and avoiding steps of activities that can be more taxing. And when we use both energy conservation and work simplification principles in our daily living, it can allow us to be a little less frustrated with where we are with our illness. And it can improve our quality of life. So getting right into who benefits, well, we all benefit from using these techniques. Just doing activities in an easier way benefits everybody. Whether you're getting older, like myself, I'm getting older, and as I get older, I notice everybody notices how we have less energy in general. And so it's good for people that are getting older. It's also good for people that have breathing problems, like either a chronic asthma, emphysema, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, so COPD, cardiac conditions, anything, arthritis, anything where you have pain or limited movement, range of motion, weakness, certainly cancer and cancer treatment. chronic conditions, underlying conditions like renal failure. Dialysis is a big one. People can benefit from using these techniques if you're in that situation. Chemotherapy and radiation, or after a surgery or prolonged hospitalization. So it really applies to a wide variety of conditions that can benefit from using this. And like I said, the goal is to aim for balance of being able to care for ourselves, being able to accomplish work tasks, and have enough time for leisure and rest. And wanted to move into talking a little bit more about cancer-related fatigue. I looked up some articles that I've referenced in the back. The last slide of my presentation has some articles that were good that talk about cancer-related fatigue and how it varies, how it's different from generalized fatigue that we can get with other different conditions. And the chronic fatigue during an illness or following an illness can kind of make even simple tasks, even simple mental tasks, leave you feeling exhausted or struggling to function. And so it can be the fatigue can be a result of the cancer itself, or it could be from the treatment. It can vary from day to day, and also it can vary from the stage of cancer that one is in, whether you're on in the initial phase, in treatment, post-surgical, also in the later stages when you're recovering and you're regaining your strength. So using these techniques can be beneficial along the whole journey, and you can use more of them when you need them more and less when you need less. Cancer-related fatigue makes a person feel weak, listless, drained, can interfere with sleep for sure, can linger for months, or it might be just temporary. Some fatigue with cancer and cancer treatment is temporary. Others can linger beyond your treatment. And the difference between the different types of fatigues with the different types of treatment, like radiation versus chemo, is generally the fatigue and lower energy levels that develop from chemo normally kind of go up and down. So you have your treatment, you get fatigued, you start to regain a little energy, then you get your treatment again, and then you kind of go down. So that's not as even. The radiation treatment, often the fatigue typically progressively gets more challenging. Your energy levels kind of generally go down with radiation. So there's little differences there. The cancer treatment and having cancer, it alters normal protein and hormone levels in our body. And this is linked to the inflammatory processes. And this can possibly be one of the causes of fatigue, and it can worsen fatigue, that inflammation process from those varying protein and hormone levels. Cancer treatment destroys normal cells as well as the cancerous cells, and this leads up to a buildup of cell waste in the body. And that buildup of cell waste that needs to be eliminated requires extra energy from us to eliminate that. So these are some of the causes of the fatigue. Energy can be drawn from the healing process and getting rid of some of those toxic substances that are in the body that help our cells function normally. So in many cases, fatigue has more than one cause. And here are some more. So conditions that go along with cancer are anemia and sometimes pain. Anemia, we could probably talk a whole hour just on anemia and what it is and how to treat that and to help it. But fatigue is a big symptom from anemia. Certainly emotional stress and any anxiety and depression that we might have that accompanies the illness or the recovery phase can definitely draw on our energy and interfere with our sleep. And with sleep problems, you know, even just 1 or 2 days of not sleeping well can totally make our energy tank. So that's a huge cause of fatigue and lower energy. Medications can cause this, certainly. If you come to other cancer support community lectures, there's so many on the topic of proper nutrition and how that can affect our journey with healing. So poor nutrition can cause energy levels to go bad. Sometimes if you're not feeling, you live alone, let's say, and you're not making the right amount of food or the right quality of food, you know, that it's like it's kind of a vicious cycle because you're too tired to cook and or to eat the right way and to shop and all of that. And yet that can cause us to have more fatigue. So it's that spiral. So poor nutrition is a big one. Lack of exercise is one. Like certain phases of cancer treatment, you might not be able to exercise, like initially post-surgical, things like that. So I'm going to get into a little more detail about exercise in a little bit, the proper amount at the proper time. But when we don't exercise, if we're sedentary, we're definitely going to lose energy by being sedentary. So a lot of this is common sense and things you've heard over and over. It's just, you know, just wanted to touch on it. And escaping, you know, coping strategies. Sometimes people can turn to other substances to cope, and alcohol, recreational drug use is a cause, can zap our energy. And other conditions that can go along with cancer, digestive issues, infections, and low thyroid function, and not getting enough water. Dehydration is an often overlooked thing. And with arthritis too, by the way, you know, hydration is huge with arthritis and any other conditions that can go along with cancer. When you're dehydrated, your joints are going to be dried up and they're going to hurt more. And then that's going to be fatiguing, the pain. So that vicious cycle. So those are some causes. And next, I wanted to move into the benefits of energy conservation. Well, we've already talked about a few: improving our quality of life, having more sustainable levels of energy is a big one. So we're not like having good energy and then none, and then it's kind of keeping a more even keel on our energy reserves when we use these principles. And we're learning new ways to do things we've always done. So it's requires flexibility. But sometimes the hardest step is identifying and modifying long-standing habits that might be actually working against us and depleting our energy reserves. So we need to use these techniques, use self-control and practice, because we might tend to want to do like we've always done. And it's challenging. That's one of the most challenging things about change and doing things differently is accepting that you need to do it differently. But it is a coping strategy, and it's part of accepting your condition and what you have to work with. So it allows for flexibility in how an activity can be done. And of course, the benefits are that it reduces fatigue, it reduces shortness of breath, it reduces stress-related pain. It allows us to feel more stable and in control of our situation. We'll have better coping, and we can use our energy more efficiently and have more independence and have a better quality of life. But like I said, the rigidness in keeping old expectations of ourselves can be a big stumbling block. So we need to be flexible and adjust our expectations of ourselves to what's most effective in helping us have a better quality of life to manage our fatigue. And quality of life, vitality, that's the end. Independence, vitality, quality of life is the main benefit that you can get from practicing these. So the 6, some people say there's 4 energy conservation principles, the first 4 listed, but I've read some, that it's like there's 6 of them. So you can add your positive attitude and your pursed lip breathing. But anyway, it's energy conservation techniques can be applied to all aspects of our daily living, whether we're working at home, whether we're working at a job, or we're performing volunteer work or a leisure activity, resting and sleeping. It applies to everything, and it can be applied to everything. So there's 6 principles that you can apply, and here they are. So we have prioritize, plan, position, pace. So those first 4 are the main ones. And then the other 2 I mentioned, positive attitude and pursed lip breathing, also are very important too. So we add those in. And I'm going to go into each one of these separately, because once we get through the principles, then we're going to apply it to specific tasks that we have to do in our daily living. So it's in occupational therapy, we do activity analysis where we break things down into their component parts, analyze them, and then do them in a certain way. So prioritizing basically is the first one, and that's where we're setting realistic goals and we're picking out what is the most important thing that we want to accomplish in that day or in that week. So we're setting realistic goals on what we can complete, what we have enough energy to complete, and prioritize by, let's say, if you have to go to the doctor and you would like to get some housework done, that the doctor's appointment would be what you would save your energy for, that's a bit more prioritized, more important than, let's say, maybe something you need to get cleaned up or something around the house. So that's an example of prioritizing. And when you have to get more than one thing done in a week, just to kind of prioritize, like, what's the most important thing, or, and so it's pre-planning, it's being thoughtful and mindful and thinking about what's more important, and putting them in the order of importance. And later we'll talk more about planning, that's the next one, but spacing activities throughout the week is one of the components of prioritizing. For example, when we're prioritizing, we don't want to avoid overly ambitious tasks like an all-day project or long shopping trips or running multiple errands when you have limited energy. So that's an idea of prioritizing, like, well, I know I have to go to these 3 places, but maybe I'll just go to one today, and maybe I'll try to do that other one later in the week, and that kind of thing. So that's part of planning too, which leads right into the next principle. When we pre-plan our activities for the day or the week, we're not overscheduling too many things on one day. So we're creating a schedule and balancing heavy tasks that require a lot of energy with lighter daily tasks that require less. And this helps us to avoid overdoing, overexertion. So it's like avoids the crash and burn where we're doing so much one day and then we have nothing for another day or two. We have to recover. So that's planning. We're distributing the heavy tasks throughout the week and breaking the activity down into its smaller steps or stages to simplify them, and sometimes eliminate certain steps. Sometimes we can do something a little less often or maybe eliminate it. So planning an activity ahead of time too, we'll talk about more in detail, is where you're going to gather up all the things you need to get that certain thing accomplished, so that when you're starting your project or whatever you're doing, you're not having to take steps to go find everything, extra steps. So it's pre-planning and working smart. Instead of working hard, you're working smart by thinking ahead and gathering what you need, just like when you're cooking. And then also planning rest periods into that if you need to. If it's a heavy task, you want to plan rest. And I think I said everything else. One thing here that I have listed is put a schedule on somewhere, a central place, like let's say the refrigerator or calendar or something, that can remind you and other people that you might live with, if you do live with other people, of who's doing what, so that it's clear. And that is a good way to plan, you know, the week too, or your day, so that everybody's communicating and knows what they're supposed to do. That's very helpful in pre-planning to prevent energy draws. And asking for help or paying for help for certain tasks that are too much is something to consider if you're able. And we're going to talk more about delegation later, because I think it should be one of the 6 principles. Delegation, it's a tough one, but we're going to talk a little bit more in detail about that in a little bit. It's not an easy one. So posture and positioning is the next P principle of energy conservation, sitting up straighter as I talk about it. So our posture can affect our breathing. If we're hunched forward and we're just letting those muscles relax, and our gravity takes us forward, we're crunching our chest cavity and limiting our breathing, that can draw our energy and make us more fatigued. Sitting upright or supporting yourself upright, it's a lot more comfortable, and you can have a lot less fatigue when you're sitting upright and you're supported well. It helps us get more oxygen exchange, you know, in our lungs, so that's going to give us more energy. And posture too is related to what position are we in when we do an activity. So if you're standing in a sink, at the sink doing something, like let's say you're chopping vegetables or something, standing requires more energy than sitting. So it's sitting reduces energy use by a quarter, 25%. So sitting to work when possible is usually a good strategy for managing fatigue. Also limiting bending, reaching, twisting, stooping. Anytime you're bending over a lot, reaching up overhead, turning, squatting repetitively, all of that over and over, you know, especially with activities, causes a lot of fatigue. So with housework, I'm going to demonstrate some things that will make the tasks easier. So you don't have to, you can avoid some of that. And something that comes to mind that I don't think I've mentioned just yet is just that some people find that they've told me, gosh, you know, using all these principles kind of makes me feel lazy, like I'm doing, you know, but it's not. You got to reframe that and think about it's not really being lazy. It's a matter of just modifying and doing something different. You know, it's not about being lazy. It's just about working smarter. You know, you can reframe it so you feel better about that. But bending at our knees instead of our waist is better body mechanics for our back. It saves our back, but it also is less, takes less energy when we bend properly versus bending at our waist. Another thing for positioning would be to keep items that you're using for a task within optimal reach, like right here at elbow level is best. Right here is better than overhead or low. So when you're doing a task, you want to adjust the height of the work surfaces that allow for good posture and easier reach. And that's going to be less fatiguing. And you want to avoid standing for long periods of time. And if you must stand, you want to stand with a soft surface like a rug or rubber mat underneath of you, and that's less fatiguing. And sitting to take rest breaks before your legs feel tired if you do need to stand a lot. Of course, sitting too long is also not good because then you can become stiff. So you want to change positions frequently. And on long car trips, things like that, you can take frequent rest breaks and stretch. But Maintaining an upright posture when sitting and standing. When you have cancer-related fatigue or any other kind of fatigue, you'll, like I said, you get more oxygen exchange in your lungs and you'll have less fatigue. So we'll move on to pacing. Pacing is another concept. Allowing extra time to do an activity is really important, not to rush through. Rushing causes fatigue. It lowers our energy levels. So maintaining a slow, steady pace while completing everyday activities is recommended. Resting often and rest before you wipe out. So we're not, doing as much as we can and then, we want to keep it even. So we plan, go back to the other P, planning, and pacing is planning rest breaks in your day. Like 10 minutes an hour is a rule of thumb for people that have a lot of fatigue. Remembering that you might need to ask for some help for the bigger tasks. Listening and honoring your body, knowing your limits, respecting your limits, and pacing your work to your limits and your abilities. I don't like talking about limits as much as I do abilities, because think about what is my ability? I'm going to work to that. And we want to avoid working so hard that we're becoming breathless during an activity. So becoming breathless during an activity should be an indicator to stop and rest and take some deep breaths, which is later, but that's important. So we're not resting too long though. So we want to get out of the habit of like laying down and taking a long nap or sleeping, because that will worsen fatigue. The longer your nap, that will worsen your level of fatigue. It can interfere with your nighttime sleep and contribute to more fatigue. But short breaks, like I said, 10, 15 minutes here and there is better than long breaks. And that involves pacing. Slowing down reduces the energy need to complete a job by up to 3 times. And you know that sleep management is important. You want to definitely work on that. We're going to, I think it's tomorrow, Emily. You can let me know. I think it's tomorrow. There's going to be a talk about that.
Yep.
That's right. Tomorrow at same time, right? 2
Yeah.
o'clock. Yeah. So sleep management is really important to helping with fatigue management. And just so you know, fast walking takes 1.5 times more energy than slow walking. So if you're walking, it's good to walk for exercise to build your energy, but know that if you're walking fast, that's going to take 1.5 more times energy. And when you're walking upstairs, that takes 7 times more energy than walking on level ground. So something to just think about there. If you live on a 2-story home, you want to think about that as far as saving how many times you want to go up and down the stairs to save energy. So positive attitude is the next principle. And it's really important, of course, because we don't want to have our thoughts go into this dark place of limitation and, oh, I can't do that anymore. And, oh, gosh, I have to change how I do things. Concentrating on what you can do is a great coping strategy. And our attitude in how we're accepting our situation, whatever that is, whether it be a short-term need for this or a long-term chronic fatigue, coming to acceptance is important. And, when we don't manage our emotional issues, then the emotional energy can demand a high amount of our energy. It can have a huge impact on our ability to function. So more so than a lot of people with chronic fatigue realize. So being on top of that, taking a positive attitude and concentrating on what you can do, and also making lists of what you have accomplished, that little checklist, okay, I got this done, I got that done, I got that done. It's really important to see it. sometimes people can write it down if you're one of those people that like to make lists, so you can see how much you really have done and see where your progress is made as you regain your strength and stamina. And making a commitment to honoring your body, respecting your capabilities, like I mentioned earlier. So we're going to move on to the next level, which is pursed lip breathing. And this is probably in every lecture that you ever hear about anything, is how much important it is for us to breathe well and slowly, and how it probably, I don't know if you've heard about the vagus nerve, but there's a whole lot that people talk about our vagus nerve. Basically, it plays an important role in helping us to stay calm and relaxed, which can help our emotional energy drains, to prevent emotional energy drains by stimulating the vagus nerve, activating it through deep breathing. So this is just one technique. There's many techniques for breathing, especially in yoga and all the other practices. You can do an inhale in through your nose for 2 seconds, and then slow exhale for 5 seconds, like you're blowing out a birthday candle. And that's just a simple, slow breath, very simple. 2 seconds in, 4 seconds out. And doing that while you're doing activities or in between when you're resting will raise your energy levels. Holding your breath, especially if you're straining to do something heavy, like lifting something heavy, will deplete your energy, and you'll run out of oxygen and energy, and it'll raise your blood pressure and do all other kinds of bad things we don't want. So that breathing while you're doing something, slow, steady, and in between things. Or if you're feeling exhausted or overwhelmed, just doing that slow breath, activating that vagus nerve, will help us calm down and help our energy reserves replenish, because oxygen fuels our muscles and cells in our body, and that boosts our energy. Okay, so that's a good one. Don't hold your breath, keep breathing. We'll do one right now. Inhale, 1, 2, in through your nose. Exhale, slowly through our mouth. Okay, so it's good to practice that. So I added in delegation because I think, even though it doesn't start with a P, I think it's an important part of energy conservation, because it's a hard one for a lot of people that are independent by nature and aren't used to asking for help. But oftentimes when someone's diagnosed with cancer or they're in cancer treatment, oftentimes friends, family, and people that you know will offer to help you with certain things. And so a lot of times we'll say, oh, thanks, but then we put in our head, yeah, but I'm not going to ask, right? So, but that's probably what a lot of people think. But certain tasks, the heavier tasks that we might need help with, it's a good idea to take them up on it and consider your needs thoughtfully when people ask, so that you can help you through this time. And delegating responsibilities, it also it's good for the person that asks too, because they're like, oh, good, I can do something. They feel like they can help in some way. So it's good for them too, if you think about it. And if the demands of the activity just seem too much, then that might be, something to consider. And giving specific instructions is also recommended, so that it's not vague, get very specific, kind of like we talked about earlier with planning in your kitchen, like who does what, or, specifically ask, hey, I need help with shopping. That'd be awesome if you could help me with shopping, or if you could help, take my garbage can out to the curb every Wednesday, or yeah, when you're doing if your neighbor asks, say, yeah, when you're doing your weeds, can you do mine? Just different things like that. So it is important too. I put on my slide here that's important that relatives, friends, families, employers, people who work for you, people you work with, that they understand your fatigue patterns and also how you're planning to manage it. And that will help them help you reinforce these skills. And it enables you to make some lifestyle adjustments. So that's just wanted to go with that. It's not always easy though, to ask for, to say yes and to delegate things when we're independent. So I recognize that. And I know that's a big struggle for a lot of people. It's a stumbling block sometimes. So next, we're going to start applying the energy conservation principles into daily activities. And I'll have a slide on each of these: eating and dressing, bathing and hygiene, shopping, running errands, housework, cooking, gardening, yard work, recreation, leisure. We're covering a lot. It's a lot of detail, but basically, like I said earlier, energy conservation can apply to anything that we do. And it will depend on the stage and how the illness is affecting you, to which ones you need and which ones you don't need. Some of these you might not ever need. But in certain stages of our illness, we will possibly, like post-surgical, for example, if you're in the hospital or just recovering at home from something. And so other tasks that might be more subtle that I'm not going to talk about are just basically even listening to someone or talking or laughing, concentrating, making eye contact. Simple things like that require energy. Even watching TV and concentrating on a TV show or coping with light or noise, or even lifting a magazine. The list goes on and on. I mean, it can be applied to a lot of different things. Some people are sensitive to certain things, and that can drain their energy. So this is just like a basic, a list about our daily routines that we can apply these principles to. So with eating and hydration, like I said earlier, the nutrition is so important. We want to eat enough food and the right kind of food to help build up our energy so that we can heal and to manage the treatment that we have with cancer. And it can affect our swallowing and our sense of smell and taste. So some things to consider is to eat slowly and to chew your food slowly. And to consider smaller meals versus heavier meals, big meals, because smaller, more frequent meals can be less draining to your energy, because as we're digesting, that requires energy to digest. And like I said earlier, with the proteins, our hormones that are changing, and the eliminating toxins, that requires energy. Digestion requires energy. So that's something to consider, is to eat slower and smaller portions. Staying hydrated, very important. I mentioned earlier that because dehydration worsens fatigue. Aiming to eat fiber, protein, and fat with every meal and snacks. Keeping our blood sugar levels more stable can allow us to have more sustainable levels of energy versus peaks and valleys. So those are just some considerations for eating and hydration. Dressing, when we're dressing, sitting to dress is easier than standing. Dressing your lower body before your upper body is usually recommended, because dressing your lower body requires more energy than your upper body. If you have a weaker side, putting the garment on that side first is easier than putting it on your stronger side. And when you're taking your clothes off, taking the stronger side off first is recommended, and then the weaker side last. It's very specific, I know, but every little thing adds up to a lot. Avoiding bending, reaching, lifting. So an example would be, I can demonstrate here. I have like a little stool right here. Is like, let's say you're putting on your shoes. You can put your foot up on a stool like this, use a slip-on shoe. And that is going to take less energy by tying your shoe when your foot is up on top of something like this versus bending all the way over to do it. Bending all the way over is going to put more strain on your heart and cause you to, not breathe well. So you want to avoid that kind of thing. So using a long-handled shoe horn like this picture shows, or the reacher. A reacher is a long stick with a grasper on the end of it that can help make life a lot easier. Some of you might have one of those to prevent a lot of bending. And let's see, choosing to wear clothes that are easier to put on. Button front is easier than pullovers, and Velcro closures, avoiding small clasps and buttons. This makes it a little bit easier. And another technique is when you're putting on your clothes to put on your undergarment first and then your pants. Stand up once, pull them both up together. So you're not having to get up and down. This is when you're really deconditioned, this would apply. And using the footstool, like I mentioned. Oh, elastic shoelaces. Some people use elastic shoelaces instead of tying to avoid having to tie and untie. And this is more for chronic fatigue. When you slip-on shoes are easier than tied up laces. Bathing and hygiene. So using a shower chair, grab bar, different equipment in the shower makes it easier. Sitting on a shower bench or chair is easier than standing through a long shower. Keeping your elbows low when you're washing your hair versus up here. Keeping your elbows close to your body, easier than up. Can be fatiguing. To have your hands up overhead. Using a handheld shower is another option there. Using a terry robe when you dry off. Instead of drying off this way, it takes a lot of energy. You can just put a terry robe on, sit outside and rest, and then you're warm in your terry robe and you're drying off at the same time. You can sit to shave and put on makeup instead of standing. And all of that decreases the energy required. And the next slide, I have pictures of all that equipment. There's an occupational therapist in the top left corner demonstrating how to use a long-handled bath sponge to wash your feet. So you're not having to bend over to wash your feet. Safer too from a chair if you're having any weakness and balance problems. The middle picture is someone putting on a nylon or sock with a sock aid. Grab bar, raised toilet seat, reacher, and chair. Those are only necessary usually in the initial phases, post-surgical, or if you're really struggling with energy. So an OT, an occupational therapist, can help determine, help you determine which might be best for you if you need that help. So shopping and errands. So this is more everyday living that we do, running around. So you want to be prepared. This is part of the planning, is like make a list of what you need before you go and organize your shopping list in by aisle or section of the store. So you're not taking extra steps while you're shopping. My mom used to do that. I remember when I was growing up, and I would say, what are you doing with your list there? Everything's in a different column. And she goes, well, she used to be very organized, and she talked about, oh, it's because this is in this part of the store, and then this section is in the next part of the store, and that saves time and steps. She had 6 kids, so she had to save her steps when she needed to. So organizing is, pre-planning before you run your errands. Using a shopping cart when you run errands. If you're using a cane, you can put the cane in your shopping cart, lean on the shopping cart to help you get through the process, or use one where you can sit and ride around. Most stores have those. Or now, since last year, there's so much curbside and pickup delivery service. There's so much more of that now since last year. That's certainly an option as well, or having them bring them right to your door would save a lot of energy. And if you're in the grocery store, bagging things in lighter bags versus heavy bags are a good idea. Just little tips, practical tips to how we can save energy. And, oh, for unloading groceries, this is another note I made to myself. Unloading groceries from your car, if you're tired after you go shopping, and you get home, if you went grocery shopping, let's say, then of course, here comes to planning and prioritizing. You're going to bag everything that's perishable separate. Usually they are separate anyway. Bring the perishable items in, rest. And then when you're feeling more, you have more energy and you've rested, come in and go in and get the rest of the things. You can use a cart. I have one here, like a rolling shopping cart, like this one. And that will help you to transport your items easier from your car to where you live, and especially if it's a long distance. So using a cart, something with wheels, is better than carrying. So that's one of the main principles of energy conservation is sliding. Pushing is easier than lifting and carrying, and pulling takes more energy than pushing. So pushing is easier than pulling, and sliding something across the surface versus lifting it takes less energy, and using wheeled carts whenever you can, either in your house or whatever you're doing, saves energy. So using portable rolling carts, and that can be folded up real easily. This one can be folded up real easily and put in your trunk. That's lightweight too, so it's easier. But this is a good activity, actually, shopping and errands, that you can be delegated to family or friends if you're feeling like you need extra help with things. Housework. So housework, dividing activities, throughout the week, balancing light and heavy tasks. Here's one, making your bed. When you're making your bed, that takes a lot of energy. So here's a way to change linens of the bed without having to walk around the bed 4 or 5 times. So if you fluff out your fitted sheet over the bed first, and then you put your top sheet on next, right over the top of it, not tucking it in, and then your very top layer last. Then you go around the bed one time, one corner, and you do everything you need to do on that corner, walk to the next corner, tuck everything under that side, all the way around one time versus going around and around. So that's just a simple example of how to make your bed that requires less energy. Sitting to put pillowcases on and unfolding, folding clothes, sitting to do that is a good strategy. If you're cleaning your bathtub or you're anything down low, sitting on a small stool like I have here, or kneeling on a soft surface is easier than bending over at your waist to scrub, or better yet, get someone else to do it if you can, or hire someone if you're able. Cleaning one room at a time, and when you're doing cleaning tasks is better than, like, let's say you're dusting all around, like several rooms at a time. It takes more energy than if you just take all your items to one room, do it all in one room, and then go to the next room. Just saves steps. And consider us for help, or housekeeper. And then washing the dishes too, like instead of scrubbing, allow things to soak, allow them to air dry versus hand dry. Just these are little tiny things that add up to a lot, and let's see if there's anything else I can think of. And later on, you can chime in if there's any other strategies that you like to use. Sitting to iron, if you iron clothes, not everybody irons anymore, but if you do iron, sitting to do that versus standing, or better yet, wear clothes that don't need ironing, or use fabric softener that can eliminate ironing. When we're moving objects, if you have to move an object, when you're doing everyday activities around the house, like I said, pushing is better than pulling. And carrying items close to your body using your leg muscles is better than not. So I'm just going to demonstrate vacuuming too, because we can vacuum with our arms this way, or we can vacuum by walking. And I'm just going to show you what I mean. It's better to take steps when you're vacuum versus using your arms. So I'll just move my chair out of the way and bring my vacuum over. And so this is easier in person, but I'll do the best I can. So when you're vacuuming, if you're doing this with one arm, that's going to require a lot of energy, get tired. But if you use both arms and you walk with the vacuum, it might be a little slower or different. It's a different way to do it, but you're actually working with your body versus against it. You're just basically letting it go along for the ride. And it's way less difficult. It's easier. It requires less energy to push a vacuum with the larger muscles versus our smaller muscles. Okay. So I also wanted to show you something that people sometimes get. It's a long-handled dustpan and broom. So this is good. Like, I have cats and the litter, I use this to sweep up every day, or sometimes a couple times a day, sweeping up. And it's a lot easier to sweep things when you don't have to bend over. It takes a lot less energy. So that's really reasonable thing. I found that at Tuesday Morning. But they sell them different places and they're reasonable. They're not expensive. I probably spent less than $10 on that, but that's just example of how to do things with requiring less energy. Making a list, a weekly plan, like I said, like laundry on one day, cleaning on the next day, and trying not to put too much on one day. And we want to create that balance so we don't overexert. Going up and down the stairs, when you're going upstairs and going downstairs, putting your whole foot on the stair is usually better. Using the handrails, supporting, and also pausing, taking 1 second between each step is a strategy too. So if you're having a lot of trouble getting up and down the stairs, use your arms to help you step with your whole foot, pause 1 second before you keep going. That's a strategy to help. And also, of course, breathing while you're doing that, making sure you're breathing well while you're going up and down stairs. Another strategy is to keep trash can in every room so you're not running around to throw things out. And also keeping things in each room, like when you're cleaning, if you have upstairs, downstairs, keeping cleaning supplies in both levels of your house versus having to carry them up and down. Vacuums can be very heavy. Going up and down a staircase requires a lot of energy. So having two, maybe an older vacuum up downstairs or upstairs, and then a newer vacuum upstairs, or broom or whatever you like to use, is going to require less energy than lugging everything up and down. Okay, I already demonstrated the dustpan. Okay, cooking. Moving on to cooking. Planning ahead with meals, preparation, gathering all the ingredients and utensils before beginning to avoid extra steps. Make large meals, use a crock pot so you can freeze things for later. Use lightweight cookware, and that helps conserve energy by not using heavy cookware. Cleaning as you go, so you're not having a big cleanup at the end. As I mentioned earlier, sliding is easier than lifting. Like if you're making pasta or something, you're going to put the pot on the burner, then take the water over and fill it up versus carrying the heavy pot with water. So just doing it in a different way can eliminate extra energy. Using electric can openers or food processors to chop vegetables versus hand chopping can save energy. Dishwasher saves energy, personal energy, not electrical. Choose convenient foods, or consider a meal delivery service like Project Open Hand that's in Atlanta, or Meals on Wheels. So I just wanted to include these in because if cooking really drains your energy, and this is another alternative. Project Open Hand is an organization that helps people with chronic disease with their nutrition, and they have home delivered meals, and you can get in contact with them with this information that I provided. And it helps people with their making food choices and improving their quality of life. That's their mission. So you can contact them if that's of interest to you. Gardening and yard work, we're basically delegate this one if you can, but if you can't, arranging, if you enjoy it, something that you enjoy to do, you want to arrange, sequence the jobs, like break up the tasks into smaller chunks and do them spread out. Like I like to divide up my yard by side yard, front, back, or certain sections, and pace, limit the bending, limit the stooping, the twisting. Use a bench outside when you're pulling weeds or to plant pots. Wheelbarrow is very handy if you're having to lift heavy, things like mulch or soil. Small sections at a time. Positioning hanging baskets lower so you're not having to reach a lot overhead, or consider getting those globes that you can fill with water, and it waters the plants gradually versus having to go do it several times a week. So avoiding extremes of temperature is important when you're showering as well as gardening. So you want not real hot water when you're showering, not real hot temperatures when you're gardening, because that will drain your energy. Key takeaways. So, recreation and leisure. So hobbies. So sitting versus standing, gathering the supplies before you begin, all the same techniques for everything else. Including a friend is good to help the socialization. That can help you feel more energized. Be careful not to overdo, modify if you need to. And you want to aim for gain versus drain. And with exercise, exercise can be leisure in some regards. It can help decrease chronic fatigue or cancer-related fatigue. And moderate levels are usually better than too much. So you're aiming for gaining energy, not draining it. So if you've exercised and you feel drained, you've done too much. Take it little by little and gradually work your way up, and that will boost your energy. And you can scale it back if you didn't. And it will help you sleep better too. And I just threw childcare in because I didn't want to exclude that as an activity of daily living, but maybe having the child or grandchild or something come up in your lap versus picking them up is a good strategy. Or doing things that are more sedentary, like drawing or coloring, board games, things like that, is a way to incorporate that into your playtime. So key takeaways: prioritize, plan, pacing, taking a break. Remember that take 10 minutes out of each hour, that's not to rush. Have good posture, position yourself right in front of whatever you're doing is better. And breathing properly, using assistive devices only if you need to. And the main thing we want to take away from this is to honor your body, listen to your body, stop and rest before you get tired. And that's my presentation. So these are the articles that I used in researching the topic, and they'll be available. So on cancer-related fatigue and managing it. and energy conservation principles. And I thank you for joining me. And if you have any questions or comments, I'm open for those now.
Thank you so much, Jane. That was a wonderful presentation with some great real world application of how people can combat fatigue. That one about the making the bed blew my mind. I never would have thought to make a bed that way. So that was great information there. Thank you. I want to be mindful for your time because it is already 3 o'clock. But if anybody has a quick question they want to throw out, you can go ahead and unmute yourself or put it in the chat box and we'll read that off.
Do we have any questions along the way?
I've not gotten any questions along the way.
Okay.
I'm just seeing some thank you, great tips, great presentation. Thank you. Love the bed tip too.
Yeah. And vacuuming too. I mean, I wanted to demonstrate that. It's hard to describe, but walking your vacuum versus using all that extra energy.
Yes.
Not scrubbing if you don't need to. Delegation, all of that. Is delegating hard for people or not? Usually is. Very. Okay.
Yeah.
Very hard. Yeah. Yeah, it usually is. It's usually a stumbling block. I find that when I was treating patients that was a hard one for a lot of people. And accepting that we have to do things differently. But it's worth it if you do.
Yeah, and I think you made a good point about being specific when you ask somebody to do something. If you make a vague ask, they might not understand it as much or do it the way that you want it to be done. So make sure to be specific so don't cause yourself more work in the long run.
Right.
Any tips for pumping gas?
What's fatiguing, Gloria, about pumping gas as far as standing there to pump it? I mean, there is a little clip that you can put so that you can, so I don't breathe the fumes of gas. I'll just squeeze the handle and let that little clasp go down, and that'll keep the gas pumping. I go in and sit down in my car and wait for it to finish. Is that a good idea? You can unmute yourself if you want to talk about what's fatiguing about that. Lock your doors if you do. Yes, make sure your valuables are out of the way. Yeah. Gloria, can you, you might not be able to unmute yourself, but if not, you can just type in what's fatiguing about that. But that's a technique that I can think of, just sitting down while you're waiting versus standing there while it's the gas is going in. Does anybody else have anything else that that might be difficult, that wipes out their energy, that they might want to problem solve?
I just wanted to know if anyone on the group is still having fatigue problems after many years of being a survivor.
Yeah, I am. It's been 2 years since I finished my treatment. I'm still struggling with fatigue.
Well, I'm going into my 15th year and I still can't do things that I could do before cancer. And I know it's a combination of a lot of the things that were discussed that contribute to chronic cancer fatigue.
Those underlying conditions that often come with it that can be draining your energy. Did you find it helpful to some of the strategies?
Yes. A lot of them I was already doing because I live alone and have to because of self-preservation.
Right.
But it was good to know that I was doing the right things.
Absolutely. And I learned so much from people that have chronic fatigue when I work with them, because they have excellent ideas that I learned from and have learned from. And it's a collaboration, and it's just reinforcement, knowing that you're doing the right thing and the best thing you can do to have the best quality of life that you'd like for yourself.
Yes, I feel guilty for leaving dishes in the drain.
Yeah.
But it is what it is.
You let it go. That's a big part of the process, is letting go of some of the small stuff that we used to maybe put too much strain and expectations on ourselves. I wanted to mention that, and I didn't, is a lot of times we have expectations that we put on ourselves. Like, before we were ill. And it's like we have to modify that, and that's the hard part.
Right.
Important. Thank you for talking about that.
You're welcome.
Congratulations for doing the right thing. Keep it up.
And I would guess, other than getting someone else to drag your trash can out to the curb, are there, I mean, you know, you do
Yeah.
push it, but
Okay, do you have wheels on it?
yeah, I do. And I
Good.
push, then push it back the next day. I just hate doing it. I guess I confess, it doesn't make me tired. I just hate doing it, but
Let's get real. Also, like I said, like pushing the vacuum, you know, like using the larger joints to do it is better than smaller. So to make it easier, breathe through it, contract the
Right.
abdominals, use your legs. You know, it's not enjoyable, but you know, that's just a technique of making it easier to get, especially if it's heavy, you know.
better to push. Is it better to push it or pull it?
It's better to push than pull. Pushing
Oh.
takes less energy than pulling. Right. Mhm. And did I answer your question okay about gas? Is it the standing there that's fatiguing?
Well, I'll confess once again.
Don't want to do
not-
it.
Don't want to do it. And so I've been trying to figure, you know, there used to be a day I used to never have to pump my own gas. Now I have to pump my own gas, and I
Right.
just
Right.
read it. But
I know. Too bad they can't bring that back where somebody
Yeah.
can come out and do it for you, right? Like they're doing with our groceries, putting them in our trunks for us, right? Yeah, maybe they'll bring that back. Okay.
Right now, New Jersey's the only place that happens.
Oh, really?
Mhm.
Very
You're
nice.
not allowed to pump your own gas in New Jersey. The attendant has to do it.
Is that
Is that
recent or is recently?
No, it's always been that way.
Unless they've changed it recently, but it's been that way in New Jersey for years.
Oh, I didn't know
Yeah.
that. Ah,
Just
Sue,
that
that's
one
true.
state.
That's true, huh, Sue? It's always been that way?
Mhm.
Okay, that's cool. Well, maybe the other states will pick it up.
Well, they really should for older people. I think they should.
Yes, and for people that are disabled, it's an ADA, it should be an ADA kind of thing. The Adult Disabilities Act, right? Could be.
Mhm.
Oh, I forgot to mention that. It was in my notes, I forgot. If, you know, certainly for when you're running errands to save energies, to get a handicap sticker if you qualify. And with chronic fatigue after cancer, a lot of people do qualify for getting a handicap sticker to park closer so you don't have to walk so far and drain your energy, especially if you have more than one errand to do in one day. So,
Also, your oncologist or one of your medical providers may give you a letter to give to the sanitation department
oh,
stating that you're unable to do it. I know I'm up in age, and sometimes I just leave it to the next week because I just don't feel like it.
right. Okay, that's good to know. Thank you for sharing that.
And Kim did say your social worker healthcare team can assist with parking decals as well. Thank you, Kim, for putting that out there.
Mhm. Right.
Thank you again, Jane. That was a wonderful presentation, and we will have this recorded and up on our website. But a lot of great tips and information there.
Thank you. Thank you for coming, everyone.
Thank you for joining Cancer Support Community Atlanta for this program. If you're interested in other live or recorded programs, please visit the online program tab of our website, cscatlanta.org, or follow us on Facebook. We'll be sharing additional information on upcoming programs.